Okay, we want to go over assessments. Assessments are going to be very important to you because this is going on your lesson plan. I need you to get with me. I need you to turn and talk when I tell you to and make this very important, okay? Because once you get this, then blocks 1 and 2 and 3 are really, really much easier for you. Okay, so our definition of assessment, we evaluate our students. This is the way we evaluate, so this is important. You may write this down. Evaluate our students. We evaluate their knowledge, their skills, and the progress that they make. So that's why we keep quizzes, anticipation guides. We'll learn all about those because they're all assessments. That's why your states do diagnostic testing, such as ACAP. I know you've heard a lot about ACAP in your schools, so that's what is important as well. Why do they matter? When we take these assessments, the main thing is to look at these assessments to improve our students' learning, okay? We want to look at them and make sure that they're learning something, right? If you teach a lesson on fractions, say, and you want to start, they may not know anything about fractions, and that's okay when you begin that lesson. But at the end, you want to do something so they can show you that they've learned the process or the application of how to use those fractions and how to work the fractions, right? So it identifies their areas of strength, their weaknesses. It guides your instruction and differentiation. Do y'all remember? Some of you have asked me about that. Gosh, how do you differentiate that learning? Well, you go by the assessments. It drives your way, the way that you plan your lesson out, the way that you teach your students. It guides instruction. It provides feedback. That's good to take into, assessments are good to take into a parent-teacher conference, because you're going to be able to say, here is Johnny's first assessment on fractions, but look how far he's come because I've given him another one. And remember, when we differentiate our learning, this is key. Listen to me when I say this. We meet the students where they are. Thank you. We meet them where they are. So when we give everybody an assessment and this little fella just does really poorly on it, we have to go back and look at that piece, and we have to differentiate his learning from everybody else's because he didn't get it the way they did. Do you understand that? So these things are very important. So it provides feedback for who? For our students, for our parents, for our educators. It supports accountability and it progresses tracking. You think about yourself. These assessments that I have you do, the things that I have you do, you hold yourself accountable, right? You make sure you turn them on in. Why? Because you want what? You want a good grade, right? You want a good grade in the course. Well, students do too. Do you know of any student really that's ever wanted a poor grade? No. We don't see that. So it supports accountability and progress. So we're going to go over different assessments. We're going to go over formative, which is used all the time. And I want you to, when you don't have to write this down now, but when we go over formative, I want you to know that formative is something you do all during your lesson. It may be a turn and talk. It may be a thumbs up or thumbs down, but you're checking them all through that lesson, right? So we're going to talk about that. Summative is just what it is. It's at the end of a lesson. Just a summary of what they've learned. So those are some types, and we're going to look at those really good. So ongoing assessments to monitor learning. That is key right there. Assessments are ongoing. Say that with me. Assessments are ongoing. What does that mean? Never stop. We never stop, do we? We never stop assessing our students. We always keep going with it. Some examples of that would be just observations of our learning. How do we observe whether a student's learning or not? Somebody tell me.
Their class participation.
Their class participation, excellent. What else? Some of these assessments that I do with you guys.
Their performance.
Huh?
Their performance.
Their performance.
Comparing like their work from before to
Comparing work from before and after. So you see, a lot of things we do are through observation. I know you better now than I did at the beginning of the semester. I know what drives you guys. I know that if you can get out of bed and be here at 8 o'clock most every morning, which you are, then you are ready for this degree that you're about to pertain. Also, I interviewed you. I got a more of a one-on-one to get your feelings of how you feel with this. Exit tickets. What are exit tickets? What do you think they are? What does it mean? Huh? What does it mean to exit?
Like, go ahead. Sorry.
Anybody?
It's like something you do, like she gives you a little assignment before you walk out the door.
Right. It's something you do just before you leave, right? Something you do at the end of what you're doing. Let me see if you learned something today. And I'm going to ask you things when I do exit tickets or exit exams or anything like that. I'm going to ask you the most important things that you may have learned. Think, pair, share. Have you done those? Have you done a think, pair, share? You think it through. You pair with a partner. You share it with the rest of the class. Good. Quizzes. What are the benefits of formative assessments? What are the benefits? These are all formative. They inform us. They give us a chance to form an opinion about how the student's doing, right? So, how do we provide that instant feedback with these things? Well, is an exit ticket 20 questions sometimes? No. How long would it be, you think?
Like 3 questions.
Huh?
sometimes it's just one.
Yeah, sometimes it's just one question, isn't it? Sometimes it's 3. Is that quick?
Yeah.
Can I give them feedback quick on that? What about observation when I walk around the room and I give them feedback? Good job. Y'all are right where I need you to be today. Okay? So those are important. It helps us adjust our teaching strategies. Remember, I told you the key to teaching, guys, is reflecting. Always reflect. Why? Why did I tell y'all to reflect?
So you can like assess where you're at, but also like improve your teaching and to help them for the benefit of your students.
Perfect answer. Assess yourself. Did it work? Is it a good one? Am I going to keep this one? Or did this one fall apart? And don't think you're not going to have a lesson that's going to fall apart. It is. You're going to have one. Even if you've been doing it as long as I have, you're going to have those lessons that fall completely apart. So it helps us adjust. Those are some of our formatives, and we're going to look at those really in depth when we do our lesson plan. So what are our summatives? What do you think the word summative means? Or what word do you hear? What root word do you hear in summative? Sum. What's a sum? Huh? It's an overall answer, isn't it? What's a summary?
Like a general idea.
A general idea of an overall picture. Do you agree with that? Well, that's just exactly what these assessments are. They're standardized tests. What have you heard lately in the schools? What's the test that they give? ACAP, ACAP, ACAP. If I've heard it one time from my 4th grader, I've heard it 50. We got to get ready for the ACAP. We got to practice for the ACAP. I've never known what practicing for a test meant, but it is because it's computer-based. The ACAP is computer-based, and they have to do some things they don't normally do in class, so they have to do that. So it's standardized test. End of the unit. Remember when you used to do units in class? Your teacher would give you several chapters, like maybe you had a chapter test after chapter 1, chapter test after chapter 2, but then after chapter 1 through 3, you had a unit test. That's a summative. What about final projects? A project that you do to culminate a unit or a chapter or whatever. It's the bigger approach, if you will. Summatives are the bigger approach. What does it measure? What does it say it measures here? Overall student achievement. Those ACAP tests or scores are going to tell that school where they rank in the state of Alabama. And that's important for us to know. Why is that so important for us to know? What's the meaning behind that?
So you can see if the students are learning.
Yeah, see if the students are going to be okay in the grade level they're in, right?
Making sure they're right on.
What else does it do for the entire school?
See where the school's progress is at, how the teachers are doing,
How's that teacher doing?
depends on.
Where do we want to be? If I'm in a school or if I'm that teacher in a school, let's think about Todd Whitaker's book. Think about that title. What's the title? What great teachers do differently. Now, what do we say at the beginning of that book? We don't want to be just a good teacher. We want to be what? Great. So how do we get there? From assessment. Assessing ourselves. Assessing the school. We want to be up there with those schools that are ranking at the top. We don't want to be at the bottom. So when we get those scores back, we do some reassessing ourselves. We do some school improvement plans. There's all kinds of things. Why do you think these little schools are doing don't snicker at the test, and they give out a little Snicker bar every day? Why do you think they're sending out all this stuff about get a good night's sleep and a good breakfast the night before? Why are they doing these things? Because they want to be the best. They're self-assessing, but they're assessing in comparison to other places. Does that make sense today? Good. It helps in reporting progress to stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders, guys? We've already talked about stakeholders one time this semester. Who are they? Teachers.
Administration.
Faculty. Who?
Administration.
Administration. Y'all missing some?
Parents.
The parents.
Community.
Who?
Community.
Community. Y'all have left the most important one out. Students. All of these are stakeholders in that school. They have a stake in that. They want that school to be the best school it can be, right? So they really want the assessment to look good. So those are summatives. That's what they do. Let's look at diagnostic tests just a little bit. These are pre and post tests. Okay? I love a good anticipation guide, and I'm going to show y'all one when we write our lesson plan. Anticipation guides are good. You know what they are? They're like 5 questions. Maybe. Most. And you ask those questions at the beginning of your lesson, and then you take them up, and you don't care. You tell the students, it's okay that you get the answer wrong. We're not worried about that. We're going to take this same test at the end of the lesson. At the end. What am I wanting to see there, Tate? What am I wanting to see? If I don't care at the beginning what they make, I'm telling them it's all okay. What do I want to see at the end?
Just like what they do know and like where we need to go from there.
Yeah. And am I going to cover every one of those questions in my lesson? Some way I am. Okay? So that's a type of and let me tell you about pre and post, and this is important, you need to write this down. Pre and post test in a lesson. Pre and post test need to look the very same. So if I'm giving them an anticipation guide, I'm going to give them a before section. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to answer these questions before. Then I give it back to them, and I have an answer at the end that says after. Same questions, after. because I want to compare. When I look at diagnostic testing, I want to compare the beginning and the end. Because what am I hoping to see? Yeah, progress. I'm hoping to see the correct answers at the end. Am I not? Very good. Okay, so we're looking at KWL charts. What's the KWL chart? We've done one in here. This is my social studies one that's up here. But what does KWL stand for? What do you know? What do you know about Martin Luther King Jr. already? What do you know? That's what we did over here. And then the W stands for what? What do you want to know, or what is your wondering? I like to ask them that. What is your wondering about Martin Luther King Jr.? What would you like to know about him that you don't really already know? And then what's the L for? Learn. What did you learn in this lesson? Isn't that so we don't really call it pre and post, but I like to look at it as that because it gives me what they know to begin with, right? And then it gives me what they learned in the end so I can compare the two. It's just a little bit harder to compare those than it is if you've got specific questions. Skill inventories, like did they master this? Did they not master that? So I'm looking at that as well. So what are my benefits? What is it, girls? Yeah, the learning gaps. What's a learning gap? That's
It's
just
like the period when like they are they learning something new in between or when they don't know?
yeah. It's that period of where there's a little space in there that maybe they haven't crossed to the other side of the learning, right? And we want to fill that learning gap. We want to make sure they connect there. What else does it help with? Huh? Yes, it helps us to differentiate that learning or that instruction. So these are, or you think that these kinds of tests, the formative, the summative, and the diagnostic, do you think they're important? Yes. Now, we used to get quizzed to death when we were in school. Had that test on Friday. Every Friday was testing all day long, just about as you think about. Spelling test on Friday, math test on Friday, all the tests. Well, if I'm testing all the time, I might not have to have that big old quiz all the time, right? And when I say that, sometimes students don't even know we're testing them. They shouldn't. We're getting an idea from that. So let's look at how we demonstrate our knowledge through tasks. And we're looking at performance-based assessments here. What are these? What about presentations? How are you going to grade? These are really important here. But how are you going to grade some presentations, science experience, and portfolios? How do you do that and be fair to everybody in here? How do we do that and let the students know exactly what we're looking for? Because remember, I said in this class, you don't want it to be a surprise. So that should give you cue as to what is a good way to assess these. What should we use? Does anybody have an idea? Let me give you a big hint. What did I use when I scored your interview? A rubric. Now, what does a rubric do? Somebody tell me what you think a rubric does.
It's like a guideline.
Huh?
It's like a guideline.
It's a guideline. Did you have access to that rubric before your interview? You did. You could have gone in. It was in the syllabus. It was in live text. It's not a really good one. I'll go ahead and tell you that. It's not. We're going to redesign that interview rubric. It's not good. Because it just doesn't hone in on the specifics that we want. It's not a gotcha moment, is it? Allows those students, when my students are doing a presentation, I want them to know what I'm going to score them on. Because I want what? The best project they can do. Does that make sense to you? Why make it a guessing game? Didn't we say most students? I'd say all students want to do their best. Some have more of a harder time getting that done for various reasons. But I want my students to do their best, and they want to do that. So what does it encourage? What are the benefits of using these type of performance-based assessments?
The student's confidence.
Huh? It does.
Yeah, I'm speaking from like as a student, I feel like when you know more, or you're more comfortable, or like the teachers, like how you're very hands-on, I think it'll make, well, I know it's made me more confident in like wanting to answer in class.
That's a good answer. Makes the students more confident. Because every time they can get up and present something, it just makes it better. I tell my students all the time, and I've told you guys, shyness is not, you can't be shy and do what you and I do. We got to be a little outgoing with this, right? We can't be, because our students are not going to get that. That's not going to be something that we can actually hide behind to teach a lesson. I give my students that are in the field, last Wednesday I went in the field to grade their lessons. They had a full rubric, and I will show you what I use. When we do lesson planning, I will show you. I give them the rubric before they write the lesson plan. I give them the rubric that I use before they teach their lesson. Now, did all of them cover every base? No, they did not. Do I understand that? No, I do not. Because it's right there. It's in black and white. It tells you what to do. Tells you that I'm going to look for turning talks. And when you do one turning talk during a lesson, that's not enough. When it says equity sticks, you know how I use my equity cards? When it says equity sticks and you don't use any, do you get points for that? No. So when it boils down to it, you got to look at that rubric to see what you want. So it encourages a higher order of thinking skills. Why do you think? Because you just saw some videos on inquiry methods. Y'all saw that? Where inquiry, they're thinking the whole time. You're allowing them to think. You're redirecting their thought process. What is higher order of thinking skills? What is that?
Can you say that again?
What is higher order of thinking skills? What is it?
Is it like critical thinking?
Like what?
Critical thinking?
Critical thinking? That's another good word for it. What is that? Is it giving them the question and expecting a certain answer?
No, it's like research. Like, since they're doing so much research, they're gonna not only, like, I don't know, sometimes based off presentation or a science experiment, you kind of have a background knowledge of things, but like when you go in a deeper dive of like searching and researching, you like learn more and can come out with
Exactly. I couldn't have said it better myself. That's very good. It encourages them to dig deeper, to find out more. I used to hear it called think outside the box. Venture out. Are these answers wrong? Usually not, are they? So there's not a right or wrong answer, because you're allowing them to do the thinking for themselves. And that's where we want to get with our students. That's where we want to reach our students. It's to get them to think for themselves. Get them for accountability to be something that they put on themselves. It also encourages students in what kind of learning? Active learning. We call it something else. Engagement. When I have a class, I want to see you engaged. Right now you're taking notes. You're talking to me. You're answering questions. You're thinking. This may be something that's brand new to you, but you have thought through it. You've used your common sense. You've used your prior knowledge of what you've done in school to give those answers. So performance-based assessment is very important. And I use this a lot in social studies because mine do a lot of lessons. You do some micro lessons, we call them. They do some projects, just a lot of different things. Okay, so students evaluate their own peers' work sometimes, and we can use that. We use like self-reflecting journals, maybe just writing. We do this in social studies. Okay, for instance, they just taught a social studies integrated with reading. Reading integrated with social studies is what they did. And so I went to observe them. Now, when I got through, they videoed their lesson, okay? So when I got through observing them, I had my sheet filled out. I had my strengths, I had my weaknesses for them. I marked all the things, I gave them a score. But before I ever showed them anything I did, you know what I asked? My first question is?
How do you feel you did?
Say it.
How do you feel you did?
There you go. How do you feel you did? What'd you think? And they're very honest. Well, one little girl said, Miss Carpenter, it's not what I thought it was going to be. I didn't do what I thought I had planned. I missed some things, which is acceptable, really. I mean, it may lower your grade a little bit, but it's, this is their first time teaching, right? So she self-assessed. I tell them this is what I tell them before I leave them. I say, okay, you have to write a self-reflection. They all have to write their self-reflection. They have to look back at their lesson. They have to think about what they did good. They have to think about what they did not conquer. And they write almost an essay on it. But here's the deal. I tell them this. You go back and look at your video. Why would I tell them that? Number one, there's nerves. They're nervous, right? Wouldn't you be? If it's your first time and your teacher was coming in to observe you that been teaching 44 years? Yeah, I would be. I was nervous the first time I got observed here. Dr. Busby came in, she tore me up. And it helped me. I took that and I went with it. Now, I mean, she didn't tear me up, but I did okay. But there was some things, she gave me some constructive criticism, and I put it here, and I went on and tried to do better with everything. That's what this is all about. Peer reviews. If we do our peer, and another reason, let me go back just a minute. Sorry. Another reason that I tell them to look at that video is nerves, number one, and they're not going to remember everything they did, right? The cutest thing was when I tell them, I saw, stop your video. They stop the video. Look at your time to see on the video how long you went, because it's not supposed to be but a 30-minute lesson. And it's hard to get it all in 30 minutes. So I tell them to look at your time, and they'll go, oh my gosh, I went 33 minutes. I said, that's okay, because we can give or take a few in there somewhere. But the other day, one of the girls stopped her video and she looked back at me, and I said, what is it? She said, my posture is horrible. And I said, see there, you would have never noticed that had you not looked at your video. Because we don't notice our posture. I mean, I sling around and do what I do every day. But when I'm looking at myself, I want to hold myself correctly. I want to model this for the students. I want to look like I feel good about what's going on. I don't want to just slump around and act like I've just rolled out of the bed, right? So she caught that, and that's why I tell them to go back and look at that video. To me, it's very important. They're not going to remember everything because they're nervous, and they will catch some things that they would not necessarily write about. When I go back and look at this video, you guys, the way I sound on a video just annoys me. I don't want to have to listen to myself. So I try every day to not sound so far from South Alabama. But I do. I can't help it. That's just part of my dialect, right? But so we're looking at that. We want them to look at their owners take ownership of their learning, and we want them to develop those critical thinking skills and self-evaluation. So this is your self-reflections, your peer reviews where you review each other, and then your rubric-based assessments are there too. You can do it. Technology is good to help you with some interactive assessments, online quizzes, things like Kahoot, things like quiz. Those things are really good. Kids love those. So those are some good ones. Digital portfolios, just things that they house, and you will do that in classroom management. Anybody taking classroom management? You do a digital portfolio this time. Designing your classroom with your rules, all that kind of stuff. So those are good ways to use digital tools there as well. What are the benefits for this? Well, it provides instant feedback. You can see what you're doing at that point, and it tells you if you did well or not. It engages students with interactive learning as well too. We definitely want them interacting and being engaged. So how do you find a balance between structure and flexibility? Remember, we preach all the time. You need to be flexible. You need to be flexible. As a teacher, you have to be flexible. But your classroom has to be a little bit structured, doesn't it? Because if it's not, what's going to happen, guys? What are they going to do? Huh?
Run you over.
Yeah, run you over. Walk on you. Treat you like the doormat. They will. What?
I said do what they want.
Yes, yes. So we want that. So what happens? Well, in informal assessments, these are unstructured, they're spontaneous, just like a KWL, maybe turn and talk, think, pair, share, 3, 2, 1. I can name a ton of them, and I've got a whole, on this particular module, there's a whole list of formative assessments that you need to download, and I'll help you with that later. Teacher observations and classroom discussions, those are informal. That's a balance. That's a balance there. Let them have some turn and talks. But when they're turning and talking to each other, what do you want to see as far as structure?
That they're on task.
Yeah.
That they're on task. They're turning and talking about what you asked them to turn and talk about, right? Not about what happened over the weekend. Right? So that's what do we do? How do we know?
By walking around.
Kind of listening.
Right there around them. We're right here. Good job, Ella Clark. Good job, Leah. Good job. Y'all are doing so well, Tate. Keep talking about it. You're pulling things out for each other. Okay, so the formal things. Here we're looking at structured standard assessments, and the examples would be graded tests or assignments there. So you got the balance between the flexibility and the structure would be your informal and your formal assessments. Have a balance between the two. Does that make sense today?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, align your assessments with your learning objectives, and that's what we're going to do when we write that lesson plan. We're going to get our standard from the State Department of Education. We're going to make up our objectives. We're going to write our objectives, and then we're going to go into our assessment piece, and we're going to look at how are we going to know that they did this. I want to do an assessment here. And if I have 30 minutes to teach a lesson, you guys, and usually we have longer than 30 minutes, but this is just out in the field when you guys go out at block 2. What are you going to have the most of? What kind of assessments are going to be the most assessments? Would it be more informal or formal? Why informal? You're correct. Why informal? More informal than formal in your short period of time, because it takes less time to do them. You can do a turn and talk just like that. You can do a think, pair, share just like that. You can do a KWL chart quick. But does it take a while on unit test or on chapter test or things like that? So we've got to align them with our learning objectives. We've got to use a variety of assessment types, please don't use the same one over and over. I'm giving you a list of over 60 formative or informal assessments. When I give you that list, you shouldn't be doing the same thing all day long. Provide clear expectations and rubrics. Remember I said that? I want you to have a clear expectation of what is coming. Offer timely and constructive feedback. Y'all have already seen, I grade quickly. I'm going to give you your feedback pretty quick. Now, with these essays, I have not, and I told you today why. Because I'm going to give you one more chance to go back in there and resubmit that essay another time to do that, because I want you to have it right. Okay? You don't need to turn in things that have a lot of mistakes with it. Use data. We want to use the data we get to inform us about instruction, what we need to do. So these are your best practices for effective assessments. If you want your assessments to be effective in the classroom, these are things. All right, so what is our conclusion? We want to recap our key assessments. And what are those key assessments? What were they? You can look back at your notes if you want to. What were those key assessments? There were 4 kinds. Formative or informal. Same thing. What else? Summative. Diagnostic. And what? Performance-based. Right. Those were the 4 different kinds. Okay? What were their benefits? What were some benefits of the formative assessments? What's the benefit of a turn and talk?
Engagement.
They can like learn from.
What?
I say engagement.
Engagement. What else?
I was gonna say like they can learn from others and see the ideas that they.
Good one. Good one. Is the feedback quick? Yeah. Okay. What about a summative assessment? What's the benefit of that? Y'all have them. You have it written down probably.
They can reflect on what they learned.
Huh?
They can reflect on what they learned.
They can reflect on what they've learned. Good. Our importance of using assessments to support student growth. Why is this so important for us to use the assessments?
To see their progress.
Huh?
To see their progress.
To see their progress. To do what else? Something I said y'all have been asking about. How do we?
When it comes to like how to differentiate the learning and teaching.
That's what helps us, right? So if we've got a kid that just bombed something, what do we need to do, Kennedy?
Revise.
We need to go back, right, and revisit that. It gives encouragement to implement a balanced assessment approach. We want that balanced assessment piece, okay? In other words, we want to be structured, but we want a little flexibility. Does that make sense? How did y'all do on assessments today? Y'all feel good about it? Okay, so because we're going to really dive in with this lesson plan to put those on there, and we'll start that Wednesday. So I need y'all to be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and ready to go Wednesday morning at 8 o'clock. Thank you very much.
Ms. Connor, did you want us to turn in those notes in module 5?